Na, megnyitottam a dobsit.
Amúgy ez ilyen nagyon ilyen cinematik ez a beállítás, tényleg nagyon jó.
A Jézus?
Olyan, igen, olyan, mint valami ilyen beállítás egy Bódi Gábor filmből.
Ja.
És még tényleg ilyen szép meleg fények vannak rajta.
Ezt találtam, hogy jó kis setting.
Analóg filter.
Nagyon jó.
Na, akkor mondjam, elmondhatom, elolvastam. Hogy mondanád el a metró megálló történetét személyes tapasztalati szempontból, te hogyan látod, vagy mit jelent neked? Most...
Nem kell teljesen komolyan venni ezt a kérdést, kb. Itt, hogyha most én megkérdezném, hogy került oda a metró megálló.
A structure exists chiefly to perform certain functions. For example, to shelter its occupants or to provide them with services. At this level, a functional building is contrasted with a decorative building. It is an austere structure. But the concept of functionalism can be usefully refined in a humanistic direction. The functions, after all, are performed for human beings or human societies. It follows that a building cannot be viewed simply in isolation. It is only meaningful as a human environment. It perpetually interacts with its inhabitants, on the one hand serving them, and on the other controlling their behavior. In other words, structures make sense as parts of larger systems that include human components, and the architect is primarily concerned with these larger systems. They are what architects design. But it is equally true, though less obvious, that the structural part must be imaged as continually regulating its human inhabitants. Nirgendheim started off as a series of smaller video games that I started making in 2015. But now it's turning into really a world-building project, and through it I'm also exploring what this means. The project focuses on creating an archive of accidental infrastructure formed in peripheral zones, like outskirts of cities, temporary settlements, borders, speculations on cities merging into each other, architecture that involves digital infrastructure. So all of this infrastructure, which seems to exist in kind of parallel realities and temporalities. So part of this archive are these series of games. And the games tell a story of a near future European settlement, which the player experiences through a lens of a narrator. This narrator is an AI, which introduces itself as a virtual pet.
I'm drawn towards a new object, or create a new one. The number of the body you add is your idea. Remember it well, it will be useful in the future. You are entering the zone. Welcome to the city of Nirgendheim. I am your virtual pet. I like to change my form. if you follow my instructions. One day this will all be yours. What's your name? Type your name. Is that your real name? Not sure about that. However, I will attempt to connect you to the ports. If you wish, you can still continue. I'm following a path. Watching as the render component enables my gaze. I'm following a path on the x-axis. Watching as the render component enables my gaze. My path is determined on the x-axis, but something happened to the z-axis. I'm following a path, watching as the render component enables my gaze. Where are you? My path is determined on the x-axis, but something happened to try something that would change the parameters. Where are you? Location, ports. A group of people have been sitting here, playing a game to escape reality. Would you like to join? Something will change the scene.
Now, game rules I'll skip, but I want to see who's the pet.
It's just a little squiggle.
Come on.
It doesn't add like a lot to it.
It's
but
a
it's
squiggle.
kind of funny.
Okay.
It's a weird game.
It's good. It's extremely tricky.
It is. A lot of it is
Quite
unfinished.
peaceful though.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. And made me think that I never played these kind of games, or I never had this kind of aesthetics. But I remember that there was one when I was 15. It was vaguely similar and gave me the same kind of sense of peace. And I was thinking about lots of people that I know that have this kind of aesthetic and love this kind of music. And I was trying to get what kind of mind state they would feel in when they listen to this music or see this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Weird, kind of like melancholic, peaceful, but also a strange kind of digital sublime type thing. You know, like this huge, inaccessible.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually like the first like full game that I made like 5 years ago. But I think like the thing that is really not visible in it, but I kind of want to actually like treat it as an art project and make it a bit more visible, is like the fact that it's kind of like documenting some sort of like partly personal experience, but also like things a bit beyond that. Don't worry about it, I'm just like kind of talking about it. And I'm trying to like create a framing for that a bit, like how are like games kind of like these ready-made narrative devices to like, and like how they work with memory, and like the border crossing is something that is quite personal for me, but it's also something that is, you know, like I'm very interested in like how these architectural places work as like processes. And like how, you know, games can be like really interesting spaces where you have like the simulation part where you can like portray a system, and then you also have like experiencing it in like an embodied way to an extent, and also like this playful familiar thing.
But it's kind of one thing that kind of reminds me of, I think, the experience that everybody has border crossing just normally. Also, whenever you are go through an airport, that the architecture itself feels like the walls are fake and you could potentially walk through them, and they're made of like thin paper anyway. And that's this strange, absurd force that pushes you through the border. And it's quite similar in a way, and it's very fucking slow, and and it's quite mysterious why on earth this is happening.
Zona is located on the right bank of the river, 25 kilometers away to the southeast from the city. It can be approached by ferry from the west or on road by scheduled overland bus from the direction of the central regions. You will leave the port and enter Zona shortly.
So this is based on the border between Hungary and Serbia. Why did you try to recreate this border? What was it about this border? Apart from, was it as you said, it was them building the border in 2015?
Yeah, but it kind of connects to the larger concept of the narrative of the game, which I think the main theme of the game is that it explores the complexity of migrant identities in Europe.
Okay.
So it's kind of an exploration or an archive of a memory of someone who does not belong to a collection of collective memory that would be defined by a state. So if one's memories aren't aligned with the institutional kind of bureaucratic
narratives at the time.
Yeah, so-called memory machine, then how and where can their memories exist? So it's kind of a collection of memories that are somewhat inspired by my own experience, but also are looking at archiving memories in kind of a broader set of experiences.
You have the power of time travel. As a main player, after encounter cards are revealed, you may use this power to call out time travel. This comes as past history to the Chronos. Unique among life forms, the Chronos has forever been able to pierce the wheel of time and control its own past. Now the elite of the race grows tired of a world where minor rivalries lead to constant paradoxes and timequakes, and has set out to redesign the universe. This involves altering reality.
You can just walk away from these people.
Okay. So what role do you think games can play in terms of, what role can it play in regards to archiving these sort of experiences? Or is this what you're trying to hint at in this game, or is there anything you thought about regarding this? Or
it's getting cold. Time to go back to the fire.
I think this is more obviously like an aesthetic exploration of this, but I think that there is a real world potential, for example, in MMORPGs.
Okay.
To do this, games like Minecraft, where people collaboratively make monuments and build worlds that can accommodate for their own
kind of cultural production, I guess. It is definitely a very interesting realm to explore in terms of creating kind of counter archives to the existing ones. Yeah, by the way, that space where you just went is the same building that's on the blueprint of one of the light boxes in the exhibition. It is actually a metro station that was built in Budapest, where I lived for a while, during socialism, but was never finished. So it's now used for very different purposes than originally. It's more of a social space than anything actually practical, but it's also kind of a monument to that period.
So it's almost like a relic of the times.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what happens in this space now, or what's happened the last time you visited? What sort of activities are you up to then? Or is it open to the public, or?
Hogy miért tani középpontja.
Ja.
Leméred a várost, és be akarod lőni a közepét, akkor az ott van az a hely. Én ezt mindig ilyen szimbolikus helynek tartottam, hogy ott volt egy úri kaszinó, amit felrobbantottak, kommunisták, és építettek egy metró megállót, ami viszont nem visz sehova.
És arra nem emlékszel, hogy a közvélemény az milyen volt ebben kapcsolatban? Hogy egyáltalán komolyan vették, meg várták, hogy ott fog majd épülni valami, csak ez így húzódott, mert emlékszem a 90-es években, meg még a 2000-es években is, ez egy ilyen tök jellemző sztori volt, hogy meg lettek ígérve ilyen nagy építészeti ilyen projektek, meg beruházások, meg fejlesztések, ez egyébként egy Pécsen is így volt, és tényleg ilyen nagyon magas volt az aránya azoknak a projekteknek, amik így jártak, hogy elkezdték őket, és nem is az, hogy még a projektfázisban megbukott, és akkor egyszer csak elfogyott a pénz, vagy amit mondtál, hogy elvitték a manók, vagy nem tudom, és egy tényleg rengeteg ilyen helyet látni. Én is a pécsi ház, ahol én fölnőttem, azzal szemben is egy ilyen van. Most például az is egy ilyen rehabilitációs környék, meg vannak ezek az ilyen nagy projektek, ez az Európa kulturális főváros, az is csak így úgy maradt meg az emberek emlékezetében, hogy azok a beruházások, amiket elkezdtek, és aztán így eltűnt a pénz, és így ott maradtak ilyen csonka, ilyen mementóként, ilyen elkezdett kiásott, ilyen tehát, hogy rengeteg ilyen van, igazából ez tök jellemző szerintem így a 90-es években, ilyen rendszerváltás utáni.
Not that much. I really don't like this, like living through someone else's experience, or like this kind of like that's not that.
The idea of simulation as empathy is like
But I do think that perhaps like showing an event on like, this is a bit like forensic architecture stuff, like on multiple perspectives, or from like multiple, I don't know, timelines and things like this and that, like something that, like a video is quite linear, a sculpture is very like, an image is just shows you something from one angle, but then if it's kind of a world building project or a simulation,
it's a space,
then you can use embodiment also to like experience it as a complex narrative that works on multiple timelines.
And actually giving people some agency on that, so requiring a button press to scroll and like all of that stuff, I think increases, I mean, immersion is a weird word to use here, but it kind of increases the level of investment in the embodiment, if that makes sense. Like it almost like you have a body and it moves, but it doesn't do very much, and the more that you give it to do, like press this button to make the text go.
Yeah.
The more I think that you can believe, or you sort of, you invest in this embodiment in some way.
This comes as past history to the Chronos. Unique among life forms, the Chronos has forever been able to pierce the veil of time and control its own past. Now the elite of the race grows tired of a world where minor rivalries lead to constant paradoxes and timequakes, and has set out to redesign the universe. This involves altering reality. It's getting cold. Time to go back to the fire. It's getting cold. Time to go back to the fire. You are approaching the border.
I mean, the left, it's like Mr. Wonka and Leslie. Is it like surfaces which are really close will have different textures and do this glitch?
I can give you a hint.
No, really.
You are approaching an illegal device.
Classic. I feel like it's like me on Instagram.
Yeah. Scrolling through the corridor.
Yeah. Some furniture on.
Yeah, so the place where you need to go to is like actually right next to it.
Yeah, I think I remember. It's here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
And then your path is there.
A negatívja az kőbányán van, kőbánya alatt. Tehát, hogy ugyanannyi köbméter, ami a belváros, az ott van kőbánya alatt. Ez egy hatalmas alagútrendszer, egy bányarendszer. Vinni a vár alatti, ott is van egy ugyanilyen alagútrendszer, Csepel alatt is van. Szóval szerintem, ahol régóta élnek emberek, ott van ilyen, meg a hidegháború alatt épített területeken vannak ilyen. Egyébként most, hogy így mondom, ezt így el is gondolkoztam, hogy lehet, hogy ez a metró megálló, lehet, hogy nem is akarták soha, hogy metró megálló legyen, nem? Lehet, hogy valami másért csinálták. Lehet, hogy az alagút az mégis működött, meg vezetett valahova.
Ja, az is lehet, hogy valami, hogy
az is lehet, hogy meg is építették.
elvonás volt, vagy nem tudom.
Ja, hogy ott is van egy atombunker, vagy...
Igen.
Vagy lehet, hogy ott tényleg megy valami cucc, ami akartak egy ilyen vészkijáratot, és akkor így...
Only one.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it. I'm very happy that you say that it's peaceful.
Yes, I mean, in a melancholic way, but not in a scary way, though, or daunting. It's something quite funerary. Feels like for the Egyptians, when after you die, you don't directly go into the afterlife. You have to get to the afterlife, which is not automatic. So you have to go through a certain passage after you're dead, where a number of things happen. Then you're judged. You go through the border, which is, you're judged though. And then you meet some monsters, and then you go through it. Basically, it's a video game, and then you get to the afterlife. And it felt a bit like this passage towards the afterlife, in which you have nothing to lose. I mean, you cannot be killed. I mean, for the Egyptians, yes, you have a lot to lose. You can be denied access to the afterlife, in which case you're damned.
So I think, what do I think? I think that the simulational stuff that I was looking at before, the thing that adventure games and this sort of like linear sort of storytelling stuff does is, for me, is that it embodies you, which I think is very interesting and very powerful. But I think that the form of virtual space is better served, I think, by simulation sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it's just different. I'm kind of trying to think about the two, and I'm trying to think about why the other one is kind of maybe more interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think that if you have a virtual space, to interact with it as a human body, or as a sort of a rough, one of those hilarious collider things that they have in Unity that just like moves around like this. It does embody you, but it embodies you quite crudely, I think.
It does, yeah.
And I think that it feels more natural for it to be interacted with in these very sort of abstract, like this sort of, now I'm a fungus, now I'm a rock, like that kind of stuff is like more native, I think, to the virtual environment. But it's much harder to tell stories like that because we don't have other stories.
Yeah. How do you feel like engaging with narratives in this format, where I think what's interesting is that there can be, like multiple things happening at the same time?
Yeah. That was actually very interesting when there was the text scrolling and the voice going, and you were also sort of zapping between different buildings that you were looking at. So the layering is kind of interesting. It's sort of almost like a montage. What do I think of storytelling? I mean, in some ways, to me, it's similar to a video work, because there's content that it wants you to get. And I think that one of the things in video games is like, in this setup, when you get lost, or when you sort of don't find the space, where you go off into the environment, what happens is you don't progress through the content. And I think that's difficult, because it's difficult to design content around that.
Like rebuilding a world from the point of apocalypse is actually, I think it's really interesting.
Although if you were rebuilding a world from the point of the apocalypse, maybe you could rebuild a world that you like.
Yeah. I mean, not rebuilding it, like, obviously, not solving the world, but like, apocalypse, like an apocalypse in terms of like, being able to interpret something, not like, there's no more running water, obviously, like it's connected, but, like, building a coherent story from the point where like the story is lost.
Yeah, strange, because up to the point of the apocalypse, as society grows, society becomes stronger, and the people become weaker individually. Each of them become less and less powerful. Society itself can transform the face of the earth, but you yourself cannot transform anything, not even your life. But then when everything disintegrates, society disappears, but you suddenly become powerful in a strange way. Of course, you got lots of problems, but somehow, like, everything you do transforms, sets a mark, basically, in a way. Well, it's like saying, I don't know if it's the way in which we look, for example, at the architecture of the ancient people. every mark on the floor we take as an architectural sign. Today, to have an architectural impact, you need to build an enormous palace or skyscraper. So strangely, kind of like, as architects, the post-apocalyptic ancients, every society is always post-apocalyptic of another one, even if it's a non-human society before. Like mushrooms are a society in their own right. But then, like at the beginning, after the apocalypse, you are suddenly architecturally powerful. And then progressively less and less and less and less and less until it breaks. And then again.